In 1836, a sewer worker followed an old drain and found a secret haul of treasure at the end. Do us a favor and click that like button. Also subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to be inspired by this heartwarming stories several times a day. Beneath London's busy streets in 1836, a sewer worker is helming a checklist of routine repairs when he notices something. He spots an old drain and decides to inspect it. Following along the underground corridor, he reaches something he never could have expected. Somehow, he has just accessed a considerable proportion of the city's riches. The Bank of England started in the wake of a major defeat of the nation's navy. In the Battle of Beachy Head, the July 10, 1690, fight in the midst of the 9 Years' War, France handily defeated both the Dutch and their English allies. The French navy took down 10 of its opponents' ships without losing a single one of its own. Afterward, England refocused its efforts into rebuilding its navy into a force stronger than the one that had lost the Battle of Beachy Head. There was one big problem, though the country had no public funds left. And the government helmed by William III could not borrow the £1.2 million that it needed. So to get the necessary money, the government set up the Bank of England in 1694. Lenders could pay into the bank with cash, and they would receive banknotes against government bonds. Within less than 2 weeks, William III had raised the £1.2 million necessary to re-strengthen the country's navy. The foundation of the Bank of England proved to be a huge turning point for the country. And with the loan secured, England could fund all of the industries required to bulk up its navy. This included the agricultural sector and the country's ironworks, which provided materials used for building ships. The kingdoms of England and Scotland unified in 1707 to become the Kingdom of Great Britain. And with a healthy bank and a booming industry, this kingdom became very powerful. William III's strengthened navy fought to make Great Britain a principal player on the global stage into the 19th century. The Bank of England changed hands when it became a nationalized organization back in 1946. And in 1998 it transformed once again, this time into an independent public organization. This meant that the government's treasury solicitor technically owned the bank, but the bank itself set its own monetary policies. Even with all of those changes, the Bank of England has maintained one particular standard for hundreds of years. Indeed, it has long kept an impressive stock of gold bars in their vaults. Many traders invest in gold when the markets become unpredictable, as the value of the precious metal doesn't waver much. Moreover, gold can easily be traded between countries. In fact, some consider it to be a universal currency because it can cross borders and hold its value. The bank's London Good Delivery Standard makes this an even simpler task by ensuring it has identical gold bars. This makes trading gold easier. And furthermore, gold trading is physically simpler than it sounds. Although you might envision someone lugging carts of gold bars out of vaults, the bars never actually leave even when they change ownership. That's because each bar has a serial number. And so when someone trades their piece, they transfer its registration to a new owner. The Bank of England protects a staggering 4,600 tons of gold, the 15th largest gold reserves in the world. All of the gold bars on hand apparently have a value of approximately £156 billion. And about half of that resides in vaults that sit just below the bustling streets of London. Indeed, the Bank of England moved to London's Threadneedle Street in 1734, and has remained in the same location since. Nowadays, the nearby Bank Tube station is one of the city's top 10 busiest. And so such a central location means that the financial institution needs plenty of security measures to protect its assets. In 2013, the Bank of England released an app that allowed users to take a virtual tour of the gold vaults. The images showed stacks of gold bars sitting on open-air shelves, which might not seem like the most protective place to keep such valuable resources. But the metal doesn't tarnish, nor does it oxidize. Although the shelves seem ordinary, the rest of the security surrounding the gold vault is top-notch. For starters, to enter the vault one needs a key. This might sound standard until you see that this key measures up at 3 feet in length. After the key's inserted, the person trying to open the door has to use a verbal password, and voice recognition software allows their entry. Once inside, the vault's spread over a huge amount of square footage. Indeed, some estimates say that it has more floor space than London's 10th tallest building, Tower 42. And the Bank of London needs that much space to house all its gold. That's because if they piled too many bars into one area, they'd start to slump underground. Finally, The Bank of England envelops its gold in a strong layer of outer protection. 2. The vaults have walls that are 8 feet thick. In fact, some say the walls are bomb-proof, since the bank's workers hid within the vaults during World War II air raids, when the Germans dropped explosives over the English capital. Obviously, the Bank of England prides itself on its level of security. Indeed, so much so that in 1973 they got rid of the Brigade of Guards soldiers who used to patrol and protect the building at night. The financial organization also claims that it has never been robbed since its foundation in 1694. But there is a rumor to the contrary that the Bank of England just can't seem to shake. It all supposedly started when a letter arrived for the financial institution's directors in 1836. The anonymous author behind the message said that they had figured out a way into the bank's gold vault. The directors laughed off the letter as a joke. After all, the Bank of England's security would surely make it impossible for a non-employee to enter the vaults. But the author of the message proved how serious they were when they sent a second note. And this message carried a more specific request. The person asked the Bank of England's directors to choose a specific time in which they'd like to meet inside the gold vault. They still thought it impossible to break into the underground storage center. But they were nonetheless curious, and so they agreed to a date and time, and then gathered within the vault. The directors hadn't taken the meeting very seriously until they heard a noise emanating from beneath the vault's floor. Then, as they stood there, the planks moved to reveal a man clambering inside. He climbed into the vault and proved that he had, indeed, been able to infiltrate it despite the security measures. The man told the Bank of England's directors that he worked on the sewers near the building on Threadneedle Street. As he performed a typical inspection of the city's underground plumbing, he had found an old drain. He followed it and realized that he stood right beneath the Bank of England's precious gold vault. On top of finding the vault, the man realized that he could get inside through the drain he had found. His discovery understandably shocked and upset the directors who stood with him underground. They had, after all, thought their carefully crafted security system would prevent such an entry. With that, the bank's directors realized they had a major problem. Had any of the gold gone missing, since there was an access point to the vault? They took stock of the bars and realized that every single piece remained in place. And this was despite the fact that the sewer worker had more than enough opportunity to take a piece for himself. And for that, as rumor has it, the Bank of England's directors decided to reward the man for his honesty. They gave him a handsome gift of £800, which would be equivalent to about £90,000 in 2019. This would have been a huge amount of money for the man who worked in the sewer. Enough, perhaps, to change his life. Even though this account is pretty widely known, there's no suggestion of who the honest man was. In fact, the Bank of England has no record of handing the money over to him. As such, the story is regarded as just that, a story. The Bank of England features the tale on their website, but it is labeled as a rumor. Still, there could be some truth to the story. For one thing, it's possible that the Bank of England didn't record the incident for fear of admitting to a security snafu. On top of that, it is known that construction works had actually taken place nearby around the time when the man supposedly found the old drain. If the rumor was true, it's safe to assume that the Bank of England has since sealed the secret entry. As such, the only way to get inside the building now is to work there or to exchange an outdated Bank of England note. Otherwise, visitors can only learn more about the long-standing financial institution through the Bank of England Museum. Since 1836, people have infiltrated vaults in much more brazen and much more lucrative ways. For instance, in 2015, 3 unassuming elderly men named Daniel Jones, Terry Perkins and John Collins would regularly convene at the castle. This is a pub in the Islington area of North London. The group's meetups, however innocent they seemed on the outside, had a more sinister purpose. In the 3 years prior to their visits at the castle, Jones had reportedly spent lots of time online researching drills. Namely, drills strong enough to infiltrate the wall of a well-protected vault. Once Jones' meetings with Perkins and Collins began, so too did strange occurrences in London's Hatton Garden. This commercial zone is widely known as the jewelry capital of the city, as well as the center of the United Kingdom's diamond industry. Nowadays, there are more than 55 shops located in the area which are dedicated to the sale of jewels. In January 2015, though, one jeweler started to feel uneasy while at work. According to The Independent, Lionel Whiffen reportedly sensed that people parked in cars around the area were watching him work at 88 to 90 Hatton Garden. 2 months later, a visitor in the area also experienced something strange. At that time, a woman waiting for the elevator noted that it was taking a long time to arrive. When it did, the doors opened to reveal an older man in work overalls, surrounded by tools. He smiled at her because she could not get onto the elevator with so much of his gear on board. On April 7th of that year, though, all of the suspicious signs would make perfect sense. On that day, security guards arrived to the safe deposit at 88 to 90 Hatton Garden to find that its contents had been emptied. And at first, the authorities couldn't find any visible signs of forced entry. Then, though, they realized that the burglars had used a drill to cut through the vault's 20-inch thick walls. The thieves had been able to reach the safe deposit area after entering through the building's elevator shaft. This was an interesting detail considering the maintenance man who blocked the woman from using the elevator a week prior. Fortunately, police did have some closed-circuit television footage of the men who had allegedly broken into the safe deposit. And so without knowing their real names, the media handed out nicknames to the crew. They called them Mr. Ginger, Mr. Montana, Mr. Strong, the Tall Man, the Gent and the Old Man. After the heist, Jones, Perkins and Collins continued to convene at the castle, but not just for pints. To the contrary, the trio had business to discuss. They had planned the heist at the Islington pub. And now with it completed, they had to figure out how they'd sell their stolen goods without police detection. Unbeknownst to them, though, police already had picked up their scent. And so they watched the trio as they met at the castle to discuss their private business. Soon, authorities had Collins and Perkins' vehicles bugged, and they heard as the men bragged about their brazen burglary, supposedly the biggest in England's history. Police eventually descended upon the workshop of a fourth conspirator named Hugh Doyle. There, they found bins full of stolen jewels. They even discovered 2 bags full of gems hidden beneath headstones on the graves of Jones' partner's family members. This was more than enough evidence for police to arrest Jones, Collins, Perkins, Doyle and 5 others for their involvement. The 4 elderly men involved in the heist pleaded guilty, and the courts handed down prison sentences to each one. And, of course, the fact that old men had perpetrated such a crime caught Hollywood's attention. The burglary has already inspired 3 films, including 2018's King of Thieves, starring Michael Caine. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please let us know which one of the stories you found the most interesting. And if you liked the video, please click on the subscription button and turn on notification, so you will be the first to know when we put out a new video. We thank you for watching and we hope to see you next time.